Red knew he didn't want to be an alpha the day he killed his father. He had been 11 when he discovered the alpha. The father he had been so much in awe of was nothing but a bully. He'd come home early from the packed school in time to hear his mom's cry of fear, but he hadn't had the courage to face him then. He had stood at the open door in fear and confusion and let himself be persuaded, as usual, that his mom was clumsy and that she had fallen. And he had been so ashamed. He had just nodded at her as she had tried to smile and said, seeing as how he was home early, maybe he could get the logs in from the back for her. His eyes had dropped to her arm, and he'd seen the red marks before she quickly pulled her sleeve down. He'd agreed immediately because he didn't know what to say, and then suddenly understood why his dad insisted on her shifting nearly every day in private. It wasn't because he didn't want his betas seeing the alpha mate naked, as he had said. It was to heal the injuries he had put there. Over the next few days, he'd watched them both with wider eyes and started noticing other things. How his dad encouraged him and his younger brother to laugh when his mom's baking wasn't as good as the gifts they were given from the other she-wolves out to impress the alpha. How they had been taught that their mom was just there to fetch and carry for the men, and the eventual realization that if he hadn't come home from school early that day, that he might eventually have turned into his father, which was even more horrifying. He'd not known what to do, and after a week of agonizing, he cornered his mom after Dad had left and his little brother Dean was outside playing. She cried when she had been unable to persuade him he was seeing things, but managed to convince him to stay quiet. The alpha was in charge. His mom had no money and no friends, thanks to the lies his dad had spread about her and the unspoken criticism. She'd become nearly a prisoner in the house and didn't even go on the pack runs. Dean was too young for her to have nowhere to go. She begged him to wait until Dean was a little older, so Red had made the biggest mistake of his life and kept quiet. He'd started doing what he could, though. He'd basically used being the alpha heir merely for bragging rights, but almost overnight, he got serious. He would suddenly turn up at home when he knew his dad was likely to be there, or convince his dad to let him accompany him to pack meetings and activities, anything to keep his dad out of the house as much as possible. And as alpha heir, his teachers couldn't complain. He told himself that he was saving her, that it had worked, until the day it hadn't.